Hello, everybody. This is Ramon again from Bold Like a Leopard. This is Testigo, Venezuela, episode 5. And I'd like to welcome back our guest from episode 2, Juan Carlo Diaz from Gainesville, Florida, originally from Caracas. And we've had a lot of events going on since the series has started. Obviously, since our last guest, Carlos Cordova, was discussing a lot about the referendum that was at the time upcoming, that occurred on Sunday. And I think that across the board, and we have like a good selection of people that have talked on this series already with pretty different opinions, but they all have agreed that this constitutional assembly that they're putting up is kind of a joke. Maybe a cruel joke is a good word. But Juan Carlo, how would you describe the last 2 days have been in Venezuela? What are the key events and issues that are coming to the fore now that this referendum has already happened?
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on the air and have the opportunity to let the story out, because the media is not airing it that much. But anyway, in the last couple of days, as you know, the Constituent Assembly, the elections were called by Maduro, who has the constitutional right to call it. However, before he calls it, the Constitution calls for him to open up some elections, a referendum, so that the people approve him doing it. Well, he chopped off that. He didn't ask the people whether they wanted it or not. Of course, the opposition, that's when the opposition did the plebiscite, which is basically not an election, but asking people, whether they wanted it or not. And if you were a citizen, you could vote, and they did something that the government hated, because they opened up this voting booth for this referendum of sorts to all the people that has gone into exile abroad, away from Venezuela, running away from the dictatorship. So they opened up, I voted here in Gainesville, and people could vote anywhere in the United States, Europe, or 100 and some odd countries. And so the vote was a big no. 7 million plus was the count, which, by the way, was about more than Chavez won with in '98.
So what was so 7 million was the total number of ballots, or 7 million was the margin?
The 7 million was the answer. No, we should not do it.
Okay. And or President Maduro, whatever his name is, Nicolas Maduro, has claimed officially that 8 million people voted in the official referendum.
Right.
And I've been like, I don't believe it, because I know when elections are kind of phony, but there have been estimates out there that it's only been, between 1 and 2 million people.
Right.
But do you think it is possible, based on your experience or the experience of people you talk to, that people were actually compelled by whatever means, threats or actual force, to go out and cast a ballot on Sunday?
Absolutely not. I mean, there is plenty of recordings of, everybody in Venezuela has cell phones. Before Americans had cell phones, everybody in Venezuela had a cell phone. So it's a country that is very turned on digitally, although the internet is the worst in the world. But just to say, what I mean is that there were plenty of people out there with cell phones taking pictures and taking videos, and they documented this. One of the things the government did is that there could not be a video camera 500 meters away from the voting centers. That's one of the things they did. And no media whatsoever was allowed inside the voting centers. They habilitated centers where there were never centers. They also instituted this thing where you could vote in any center you wanted, which is against their rules. They also instituted, of course, the machine vote, the electronic machine vote, which, by the way, was a great gift from a corporation here in the United States. They also instituted, in addition to the normal ID that has always been in Venezuela, about 2 years ago, I think, I'm not sure about that, but about 2 years, they instituted this Carnet de la Patria, which is an ID that basically is an additional ID that is digitized, and where they can actually track your location. They can also track all your personal information. They can track. They did it at the beginning to limit the amount of food that you could buy at the supermarket, and that's how it began. And of course, most of the opposition didn't want it, didn't do it, because at first, well, even now, it's something that is optional, that you don't have to do. But that's what happened. So the ones that have that get the benefits, and the benefits are access to cheaper food, access to a few benefits that they give you, including cell phones and even some little tablets that they give away now. And that's how they buy votes. And so you could vote with one of those, with one of those IDs. And so that makes it very easy. And as a matter of fact, there's plenty of documentation of the fraud that has happened because of those little IDs.
So not to be kind of, skew this conversation a little, but could you actually vote without one of those IDs?
No.
Well, I mean, a lot of people here in America that tend to think voter IDs are a problem here in America should probably hear about that in Venezuela, because over here, when you talk about voter ID laws, it's made to be the most ridiculous law in the world. You're free to disagree, of course. I think it's a controversial topic here in the U.S., but let's talk about the quality of an election there, which Carlos, who, I talked to him last week. I think me and him have plenty of differences of opinion on many topics, but this is where I'm starting to see that this issue with Venezuela is not really limited to people of one philosophical area. And I'm reading right now a report by the Carter Center of Elections from 2013 on Venezuela's elections last time when President Maduro was, or it was the last time he was elected.
Right.
And they were saying, even then, when there wasn't even as much attention as now, it says that there were certain disparities in the amount of funding, and it says the findings highlight a number of inequities in campaign conditions, both in access to financial resources as well as in access to the media, which reduces the competitiveness of elections, especially in a legal context that allows the indefinite re-election of public officials. So to set up this topic, here in America, we do have the same controversy over campaign financing, money. I guess I just said the same thing, but hard money, soft money, guerrilla campaigning, grassroots campaigning, the communications, or the media, that whole infrastructure, how much they're skewed to one side or the other. It's a huge controversy. Based on your watching the media, and I've only been watching, I watch a little of Telesur. I watched NTN 24 today, both in Spanish. What would you say is the fairness of the coverage of this referendum? Are people able to state their real opinions on the referendum on the air, or prior to the referendum?
Well, to tell you the truth, personally, I'm ashamed of the media in the United States and in Venezuela, most of all. And notice that I am ashamed on the basis of morality, because what I'm about to say really hits my side. But most of the coverage that I have seen, which hasn't been that much, it's usually CNN, BBC. They are skewed to the right, or to my side, to the opposition, which is great for me.
Okay.
Nonetheless, it's a skew that should not exist, not in the media. I mean, they should limit themselves to inform, and this is this and that is that, and that's it. You make your own opinion. But no, they take sides, and it has turned into a real political
football.
circus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm ashamed that it is that way, because then truth is you can never find it. Of course, what I see is what I like to see, and I agree with what they say. All right, so it's not like they're lying, but at the same time they're skewing things, and their purpose and their motivation is clearly to make a political statement, which I don't believe is up to them to make.
So you're talking about the BBC and the foreign media too.
Yeah, CNN.
What do you think the foreign media's interest is in Venezuela when they do report on it? Do you think that they're trying to look after? I mean, this is something I think I can agree with you on. They're looking after their own breadwinners' interests sometimes.
Sure.
But is their coverage accurate? I mean, those are two separate questions.
Yes, yes, they're definitely pursuing their own interests, monetarily and otherwise, and I like to believe that they are also pursuing the truth. Uh, Everything I have seen, if anything, is short of how bad it is. So I think they all actually minimize and soften the Holocaust that's happening there now, which
So
angers me.
that's a pretty bold way to put it. Calling it obviously a Holocaust, which is you're actually saying here that even though they do have an interest in putting their point of view out there in opposition to the Venezuelan regime, they're understating the
Sure.
magnitude of the problem, which I find
Yes.
that's kind of it just sounds kind of contradictory on their part. And I remember, if I can make the comparison, maybe you'll agree, when the Syrian civil war was not yet, fully blown, they were talking a lot about President Assad's, dirty side, and how he was, oppressing these demonstrators. And it was clear that they were trying to portray him as some sort of ogre, which I don't think that he's a good guy. But they were clearly like holding back on the real issue, the real issue at hand, until,
Yes.
in my opinion, it got to such a horrible point that one day we woke up and America, I believe, was funneling money to Al Qaeda affiliated groups, which it's almost like the media is okay with whatever happens, to the point where they mess it up so far that we're basically involved up to our ankles.
Exactly.
So
It's almost, well, if I can interrupt you, it's almost like what happened in Iraq, right? Uh, I, I like to think that the American armed forces didn't go over there saying, let's do it so badly that ISIS comes out of this. However, there are plenty of documents before the war even started saying that that is exactly what they were planning. Like the New American, the New American 20th, 21st century
Yeah, Project
documents.
for a New American Century. Yeah.
Yeah, right. They show all their plans. So it almost seems like ISIS was a planned outcome, and I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt that. But whether it's true or not, here we are in 2017, and that's the reality. And so the same way that they create wars to sell weapons, I believe the media creates these vacuums and this misinformation, guide information, so they can make more stories to sell. I notice a very cynical point of view, but I've been on this earth long enough to know that there are very wicked people planning very wicked things, and money, man, is the fuel.
Yeah, and it's you know, it's a difficult position for people. You know, I do care about this conflict. Obviously, I have my perspective on why it happened. I actually made a video, you know, where you know, I pointed out where I do disagree with you on the root cause. But I think that you know, we're kind of treading water here as, you know, Americans and you as Venezuelans, where I think we can agree, based on our experience in the past, that sending U.S. troops into a foreign country without a plan A, and also with the wrong interests in mind, is the wrong way to solve the conflict. But what is a problem, you know, more than stating what's the wrong way to solve the conflict, is something I was talking to Carlos about on I think it was Thursday. I talked to him, which is what do you think Americans can do? You know, let's say whether it's materially or rhetorically, to help people that are, you know, we have now, apparently, I was reading in Wall Street Journal today, Venezuela has the largest number of asylum seekers in the United States as of right now. So what do you advise to people is the right course of action to take to help people without calling for some sort of crazy war?
Well, before I answer that, I have to say I believe the first illusion or the first fallacy in what you said is that the American government is interested in solving issues. I don't think they're not interested in solving issues. I think they're interested in maintaining and managing issues.
Right. Yeah, I actually wasn't talking about the government. I was talking about like just Americans interested in the situation.
Right.
But the government, yeah, the government. I mean, I don't believe governments really intend to solve problems when they can milk them for whatever they're.
Right. Well, and because of that, they have sold us a script. So that is my opinion, my point of view, is that they have sold us a script that plenty of Americans has bought. And hence the pride in that we are the saviors of the world. We are, you know, taking freedom, liberty, and democracy to the world and defending the world from evil. And we're just going out there to save the day. And I think that that's in the minds of most Americans, but I think that is a complete fallacy. I think that's an illusion created in the minds of
I'd say that there's two extremes there. There's the extreme that you're talking about, which I do see. I see it a lot among people. You know, I'm on the right side of the spectrum economically, and I think it's a problem. The people that are, you know, they're gung-ho for the military all the time, which is the wrong priority. That's not the way a country can, you know, manages its own affairs successfully. And then on the other side, there's people that think that our country is the most evil thing that ever happened.
Right.
And yet they never leave. And I see more of this polarization along those lines.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking right now is that I don't even know what to make of these new sanctions that were announced in the past couple of days. Do you believe that this action taken against President Maduro, whether or not it's justified. I don't think that he's a good leader. I think he's done plenty of wrong things. However, do you think that they will be effective?
You know, who cares what I believe, Ramon? You know, you and I, we can read up a storm, and at the end of the day, we don't know what the hell's going on. You know, I keep scratching my head, you know, whenever I read and everything I see, because I see with my eyes something, but then I'm reading all this other stuff, and that explains that in a completely different light. So we're basically living in a world of illusions, and I think it's very important for us to keep in mind that at all times. I have a lot of my friends that are, you know, they get themselves in these ideological boxes, and they can see light outside of that box. And so I don't know, you know, I think it's a joke. I see in many aspects the American government is complicit with the regime in a certain way, but I'm one who thinks that Cuba is still there as it is because the United States wants it that way. Because if they didn't want it that way, they would pull a Salvador, a Nicaraguan, a Grenada, whatever. They do whatever they want all over the world. So if Cuba is there, it's because they want to. If Venezuela is there like it is, it's because they want to. And as a matter of fact, even all throughout this rhetorical war between these two governments, Venezuela and the United States, the oil channels are still open, the embassy is still open, business as usual is still open. So, you know, I don't know what to believe, you know, and then, like I said, who cares what I believe? However, I do hope that whenever they say that they sanction these assholes, that it is true. I hope that somehow it will hurt. However, eventually who that hurts is the people. I mean, people are already starving. You know, so if the United States stopped buying oil from Venezuela, imagine that. I mean, that's the only income we have. Will that? Well, I was reading an article today that was saying, I don't know if this is true or not, that China actually made a public announcement that they will not allow any American or foreign intervention in Venezuela. Point blank. That they are ready to answer any invasion of forces in Venezuela. So I mean, they own half of the country. The Venezuelan government basically pawned us to them and to the Russians. You know, they have this rhetoric, the anti-imperialist rhetoric, and yet they turn the other way and they pawned us to China and Russia. So now we're Chinese, you know, and actually that's what I think, you know, which is another aspect of this that we haven't talked about. I don't think that this is necessarily a Venezuelan problem. I do think that this is more of an international push and pull of interest in which Venezuela is just in the middle. I mean, because point blank, the same thing that is a blessing for Venezuela, which is the oil, the diamonds, the gold, and all the minerals that more and more minerals are rare earths and stuff, are lithium, being found in Venezuela, and everybody wants them. Everybody wants them, so everybody is trying to fight for it. So once things get to that level, we all very ignorant. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, that's like a real. I mean, it's a conflict, which you know, for Venezuelan, you know, who's been reading, you know, I think a lot of the people in Venezuela would probably off the top of their head not mind if something happened where somebody invaded, and then a few months later it creates a whole different problem.
Right.
So but you know, obviously people that read up on these situations where we're talking about foreign geopolitics, where, you know, you have Russian, American, Iranian, all these interests are competing. This isn't a question of good versus evil so much as who gets the cash, and
Right.
that's why there's such a conflict, internally. For me, I think I would love it to be that there was an easy solution like what we thought President Bush was giving us back in the 2000s, or President Clinton said in Somalia. He sent our troops into Somalia, and yet those conflicts still exist. And it's been clear to me that even in conflicts where the United States is not at fault, and they do exist, but I think that we have to shift our mindset, talking about America for a second, to more non-interventionism. There's only a few places in the world where America is really threatened. I think North Korea right now is becoming one of those issues. I see it as a real issue. But all these places where they're telling us to intervene, like Syria and Turkey and all that, what can we do to impose a peace? It's not like it used to be back in ancient times with the Roman Empire. There's all this new weapons technology, and then you get these asymmetrical conflicts and all that. But I think getting back to Venezuela, there still are a number of people that believe that this economic meltdown is not to blame, is not the Maduro government's to blame. So what would you say to the people that still think that this person can right the ship, put Venezuela, now he has his constituent assembly, and he de facto will be the whatever you call it, the end all and be all of Venezuela for the foreseeable future, according to the law? Do you think that do you have any confidence that something good can come of this?
No, not at all. I mean, this is a sham. It's a sham. It's a circus. It's not going to do anything. Actually, he has his wife there. He's one of the people that got elected. His son, which is half-wit. Uh, Many of the people that are in the cabinet, holding cabinet positions, are actually in the constituent. So even today, some of the people that ran for it are calling foul now. Some of the same Chavistas that ran for it are calling it foul. No, I don't think it's going to do anything, man. And I don't think, and let me say this. If the opposition was to win today, I doubt very seriously that they could fix the wrong. I think it's going to take a while. So no, I think that what this does is allows them to get more rooted into this revolution that they're trying to do. And I do quotation marks because there ain't no revolution, man. Things are worse than before Chavez started the revolution.
Right,
A
and
lot worse.
that's kind of where we had, a difference of opinion last time, which I did respond to. But you do see in the rest of Latin America, there are other the ALBA bloc. You have Ecuador and Bolivia and Nicaragua. Do you think that there is hope that those countries, and if you don't know the particulars or you're not focused on that, I'm fine. But do you think that they can avoid this type of pitfall because they're in the same sort of trajectory as Venezuela in many ways?
Look, the rhetoric goes like this, okay? Simon Bolivar liberated 7 nations, I think, in South America from the Spanish Empire back then. And but things fell through. So now comes Chavez, bringing back those memories and that nationalism and that pure and says, okay, we are the Bolivarian Revolution. We are going to unite Latin America into this new socialism for the 21st century. And that's the rhetoric they use. And so all these countries that you just mentioned joined into this revolution. Now, and of course, behind the puppet master behind this thing, or at least in some level, I believe there are other puppet masters, but Cuba is the puppeteer, right?
Yeah.
And so Venezuela was the cash cow. Venezuela is the one that is sending money to fund this revolution in Nicaragua, in Ecuador, in all the ALBA countries. Okay, so the cash cow has died now. So I don't know where the hell they're going to get the money. And if they get the money, I sure like to find out where it's coming from. But there's no money anymore. So no, I don't think. I think little by little, Mercosur, which is the other organization that they created to deal with exchange and the economy of this country. I think Mercosur and ALBA are going to eventually fold over. I mean, there's no cash flow.
So this is I feel should be very disturbing.
Hello?
Even though it wins, because we all they care about is can you hear me?
No, it's somehow cutting off. Hello?
Hear me?
Hello? Yeah, I think I hear you now. Hello?
Say something.
Okay, yeah, I can hear you now. Hello? Hello? Can't hear you. I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, you're back, I think. Hello?
Yeah, I'm hearing. I hear you.
You're coming in and out.
Here and there.
Hello? Hello?
Can you hear me?
You're coming in and out. Speak to me?
Hello?
No?
Oh,
No? Okay, you're back. I think you're back.
All right, I think you're back.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Yeah, yeah, I think that was interference on my side. Anyway, so I think that this is a huge issue, and meanwhile, Americans we're not even paying attention really to.
That's right.
What's important here. People are obsessed here with crap. With a guy on who told somebody in the New Yorker that all this smack about other people in the White House. That's what people are focused on here when we have pending nuclear war with North Korea. However, what you just said with the ALBA countries it should be major news, beyond just Venezuela, because we're talking about Venezuela already has a refugee situation, and we're talking already about a situation with Nicaragua is in the Central America. If they have an economic meltdown the same way that Venezuela did, where do you think those people are going to be headed? Northward. So it could affect Mexico. It could affect us. And it's not like we want those countries. It's not. Sometimes I hate it when people, I know people that say, "Screw Mexico. They can eat shit." But I'm like, if people suffer in Mexico economically, and Mexico is not a successful country, we feel the effects.
That's right.
They're our neighbors. It doesn't matter. And I have opposition to NAFTA and issues like that. But the objective is not to make Mexico suck. It's to make the relationship work, make the trade work. And I think this is it's a tragedy in ways, because I think 10 years ago, Chavez, not Maduro, because as you said, he's kind of a flunky, but Chavez was seen as kind of the new Latin American, especially South American icon. and
Yes.
we've kind of lost that, whether you agreed with him or not. What do you think about other South American countries eventually having a positive effect on Venezuela? Brazil is kind of in the shitter itself.
However, Brazil, and Argentina, and Colombia, which Colombia right now is in the verge of of kind of the same thing, only a little different. I mean, the FARC is now officialized. They're now becoming a political party. President Santos has allowed this travesty, and I call it a travesty because these are assassins and people that have killed thousands of people, and now they're just going to put their suit and their tie and do politics. But that's happening in Colombia. It's happening in Ecuador. It's happening in Peru and Bolivia. And so all these countries right now have this push and pull of the Chavista revolution fueled by the Cubans versus what they call the ultra right fascist terrorist groups in which I'm part of.
Yeah. No, I thought for a second you're being this is a thing here that it's happening a little in America, but in Latin America people don't know that it's more extreme. That it's almost like there's no middle class. Forget about middle class. But a middle ground politically, I did read, and by the way, I don't know if you watched my episode with Carlos Cordova.
Yes.
We talked a little about the issues of Latin American political spectrums, and we mentioned Chile. At one point, there was a middle ground in Chile. That was in the 1960s. It doesn't exist anymore. It's kind of like, for a long time it didn't exist. And there are people that they want to go back to the Pinochet era, which I would say is not good either. Even though I am a believer in Chicago-style economics, I don't believe you use death squads to enforce them. That's definitely that's one of the reasons that I think that Americans are ignoring that we have to the south this huge powder keg all across South America.
Right.
I don't know if Mexico is affected, but we're really pretending that we live in this isolated
bubble
area, and these things they're going to affect us economically. There's no making any bones about that, but I think that we're kind of painting a very bleak picture here, and it's not for nothing, because as I've said, I don't believe in a military solution. You don't believe in a military solution. I don't think that sanctions are on one person are really going to make an effect. I think that unfortunately we're going to have to watch this get worse before it gets better. And
however, let me say this right there, since you're talking about it, I don't want to forget it. Look, I'm 54 years old, and I'm dealing with some very ideological challenges here that go to my deepest core of my spirit, because I'm somebody that believes in freedom and of every nation following their own course and battling their own battles, and I have my own ideas about the evil empire and all this stuff. And but right now, brother, I'm scratching my head whether the only solution is an American intervention. I don't see any other possible outcome.
I have a bad
and
connection
that is very scary to me.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, the connection was freezing a little.
I'm sorry.
So I win another possibility. By the way, not a great possibility, but it's still a possibility. Do you think that it's possible that a civil war of the type that we've been seeing in Latin America hasn't happened for a while, but you know, an actual civil war could break out where you have pitched battles between these government forces and rebels? Do you think that's a real possibility right now?
Uh, no, it's not. And the only way for that to be possible is to begin following the script
Right.
where the United States started sending weapons to the rebels, right? And we've seen that before, and we know how that ends,
Yeah, we've seen.
right? Because the opposition doesn't have weapons, and when we're talking about the opposition that would be willing to put their ass on the line to get rid of the regime, we're talking about a very small group of people. Venezuelans are a very pacifist. Most of the people that I know personally, they're not out there in the streets throwing stones. For everyone that is throwing stones out there in the street in protest, there is probably 500 people that are not throwing stones, but are going like, yeah, 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 go, 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 So, because people are not willing to put their lives on the line. They prefer to live as slaves, and they prefer to live under the boot of the Chavista regime than to die.
Yeah, and that's kind of the disturbing thing about the way the media that I see that is portraying it, that's against the Chavez regime, they're losing sight of the fact that the countries that support Maduro, um, such as Cuba and Iran, it's not like they've never had to deal with putting down a rebellion before. They're professionals. And Mr. Maduro is going to have all the professional help that he needs, if as long as these countries have a good interest in it, as long as he's giving them what they need out of it. This is a very bleak situation for people that would be trying to bring down the regime. Here's another possibility that I'm seeing that given what I just said is kind of unlikely, but it can happen because of the numbers that I've seen in terms of the polling and the turnout and all that. I believe that the regime can collapse within itself just due to the lack of public support. It's happened in countries before. The one I keep bringing up is Romania. Um, at the same time, I think that as long as, like you mentioned, China and I mentioned Cuba, or we've both mentioned Cuba. These countries, how far do you think they'll invest in order to keep their interests in Venezuela secure? Do you think that they would be willing to actually knock Maduro off and compromise with somebody else, or are they committed to this man?
Well, they have such machine already set up that it would be very hard for them to just shut that machine down. And I'm talking about rhetorical machine and all this ideological machine, the propaganda machine, and the brainwashing machine that is what keeps the machine going. I think it would be, from their point of view, it would be very stupid for them to turn it off and turn to the opposition and say, okay, let's deal. Because they're up to here in investments with Venezuela. I mean, Venezuela has borrowed themselves deeply from China and Russia. So, but like I tell my girlfriend, anything is possible, and more than likely, we will be very surprised. I believe this government is going to fold. However, I don't know how long it's going to be before it does, because it doesn't. If nobody obeys, nobody governs. So. I don't know what's going to happen, man. I just got to stay positive and keep on the net and trying to raise awareness and hoping that this breaks somehow.
Yeah, that's I think, like, we started off this hour. I think Carlos, for some reason, made me more optimistic, and we've moved all the way back well, not just because of this conversation, obviously because of what's happened since then. Um, how about this is, maybe give your interpretation on this, the issue of freedom of expression and assembly in Venezuela. I read a little about this SEBIN service, the Bolivarian intelligence service, and they appear to be, at least the beginnings of a secret police, if not already a secret police. How free do you think Venezuelans are to publicize or assemble freely on the streets of Venezuela and in the workplace?
They are extremely good. They are so good that they're surgical. In other words, you can say certain things and you have certain freedoms, but don't overstep that because there'll be somebody to smack you down. They have even people, what they call sapos, which in our lingo is a frog. I don't know.
Yeah, they're
Sapo is a
like
frog.
they're these moles, basically, right?
Yeah, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard it. I think I heard it in. I forgot what context I heard it. I think it was in. I think it was in Narcos. If you watch
yeah,
that show,
pro.
so,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
So it's like that. People that are friendly to the regime, they're willing to for a box of food or for whatever they give them a cell phone or whatever. They're willing to rat out, whoever is blocking the street or whoever is protesting out there, and that's what they do. And as a matter of fact, as we are speaking, uh, the day of the Constituent, which was the day before yesterday, 16 people got killed. Now, what they are doing is the Sabine that you mentioned, they goes and takes their cell phone and confiscate their cell phone, see who's there, get pictures, get names, and then they go pay them a visit and put them in prison. That was the day before yesterday. 16 people. They killed 16 people. Well, today they are actually having posts along the major highways in the city and interstate, where they stop cars and they get people out and they get their phones, they check out their cars. If you have an opposition hat, they put you in prison. If you have a cell, they confiscate it and they check it out to see, what are you sending and stuff. So he has gotten to that now. And that's what Maduro wanted with the Constitution. He wants absolute power so that he can do whatever the hell he wants. And we're looking, I tell everybody that is interested in this issue, stick to YouTube, stick to Facebook, and look for Venezuela, because tomorrow or Thursday, the Constituent Assembly is going to go to take over the National Assembly that was democratically elected by the people in fair elections, and they're going to go and kick them out and take over the building. So the Chavistas already said, we're going to go there and we're going to kick ass. And so the opposition leaders are asking for people to go. Now, like I said, I don't know how many people in the opposition are willing to expose themselves to bullets, because that's what Chavistas have. They have bullets, and that's how they deal with this thing, with bullets. So, I'm in suspense right now. I don't know what's going to happen.
yeah, this is like this is no joke. This is really I was probably 6 years old when the Soviet Union fell apart, and this was kind of a little more shadowy what happened when Gorbachev was removed from power by the KGB, and they wanted to say, no, we're going to keep, the KGB style of politics. Well, in Venezuela, unfortunately, I'd have to say I think the advantage is on the side of the Sabin and their masters. We're seeing kind of these people that are at the top. I've been seeing these videos. You've probably seen a couple of them. You live in Florida, of course, where I've seen a couple of them take place. Could you comment a bit about some of the ex-Chavistas that have come to South Florida, and they've you see them in cafes, and then what happens? And what's your opinion on that?
Well, the Chavistas, they talk all this shit and all this socialist rhetoric in Venezuela, and they get the poor people, all gung ho about socialism, and then they put their Adidas shoes or their Louis Vuitton tie, or they grab their big yacht and come over here, and they love Miami. They party in Miami. They come to Miami for the weekend. They have bank accounts here. They have businesses here. I don't know how the hell that happens, because, well, I do know. It's money talks. Because when you apply for your visa and stuff, some of the questions are, have you ever been part of the Communist Party? Have you ever been affiliated with any organization that commits terrorist acts, or that has attempted against the United States government? All those questions are there. So obviously they're lying, and obviously the American government knows this, but they have money, so they open the door and they can come in. So yeah, what's been happening is whenever the Venezuelan people that have to come here in exile, running away from the problem over there, when they spot one of these businesses or they spot one of these people having a nice dinner, then they just basically shame them. They record them with a cell phone, shaming them, and they chant all around them and make them actually get up and leave the place. And so then they put that on the internet, and that has become a thing.
Yeah, I was very shocked, not because they did that, because it's just shocking that this happens, and I was wondering the same thing, because we're both uh, abreast of the situation, both me and you. Under President Obama, he was not a friend of the regime either, publicly, but and I don't think President Trump, I don't know what his policy is, because forget it. It's almost impossible to really see what's going on because of the way the media is working. But I was wondering, how do these guys that they spend their entire career, all they're saying is America's the devil, America is the exploiter, they're the gringo imperialista and all that. That
Evil
is the
empire.
yeah, evil empire and all that. Which okay, so you've stated your case, and then you go on vacation, or you go on business, and your place of business is Miami, which is that the seat of the Cuban community here in America. And I've never understood it. That's like a question that I'd really like to know, and I think we're both kind of flabbergasted by it. Um, it's like, and the same thing, by the way, happened with the fall of the Soviet Union. You had all of these dudes that they had the Communist Party card and whatever, and they're like that. They saw the ship is burning, and they said, I think I'm going to start, a liquor store down in Miami Beach or whatever it is, and
Right.
and that's what happens. That's I think, unfortunately, we see people that they have the control over the means of production or of the economy, and when they see that the economy is melting down, they will run and take as much as they can. And
Right.
that my personal perspective is that's the way people behave. It's like the ugly side of humanity, and it's hard to like cure people of that, and I don't think we can.
I think we can. I think we can, and I think the laws back that to happen. But I
Mhm.
think, hey, money is a great motivator. I mean, the
Yeah.
Vice President El Aistemi, Vice President of Venezuela, he's actually been indicted as a narco by the DEA in the United States, and he's the Vice President, and they finally, after all these years, after this thing happened with the Constituent Assembly, they finally sanctioned him and froze $500 million while the guy is talking anti-imperialist bullshit and death to America in Venezuela, and running drugs to the United States. Two of Maduro's nephews, who are the sons of his now wife, are actually in prison and serving sentences for trafficking cocaine into the United States from Venezuela. So, I see certain complicit. I see that the United States government turns a blind eye, or I don't know exactly how that shit works. I'm sure the CIA is in there somehow, and the rhetoric that under which that happens. But it's happening. I mean, the United States opens the doors to terrorists and to people like that all the time because of money.
Yeah, we're kind of this is the dark side of how we've allowed our country to develop, where unfortunately President Maduro now has almost unlimited power. In America, people are complaining how President Trump has so much power. It's funny that a lot of those powers were given to the presidency when President Obama was president, and it's kind of that's what sort of has propelled me closer to libertarianism. I don't believe I have an ism, because you have to like keep grounded in reality, but
Yeah.
I still think you have to keep people that are at the top accountable to somebody. You can't let them have basically all of the horses to run with.
Right.
And I think let's start to close right now. Because we've gone for, I think, an hour and 15 minutes, but we're in a bad situation. It's getting worse in terms of freedoms in Venezuela. As we've described, the repercussions will be felt all across South America and Central America because of Venezuela's place in that economy and in that sphere of influence. Let's see, what is your message right now? What you go to your job every day, or you interact with your community. How do you do that while you have this conflict going on that you have so many people close to?
Man, when I talk about Venezuela, they say Vene what? Where's that at? So right there, it's like, what the hell am I going to do? Uh, 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 stay abreast of world situation, because it will eventually come to bite you in the ass. That's all I can say. You have to care, because it's not about Mexico. It's about what the Mexican problem will eventually knock on your door. That's what it's about. Other than humanity in general. But I will leave you with this: 132 dead people by now at the hands of the National Guard and police. 122 days of multitudinary protest in the street. 15,000 wounded. 5,000 detained. Arbitrarily detained for whatever reason. I mean, if they don't like the cowboy hat that you have, you're in deep trouble. And once they detain you, I mean, it's not like they're gonna run you follow things by the law. They throw you in a prison, in a cell about the size of this room, together with another 50 guys, and you gotta shed on top of each other until whenever they wanna let you go, or beat you to death in the process. So 5,000 have been detained lately, of people just like you and me, brother. Just like you and me. I mean, we're not talking about terrorists. We're not talking about fascists. We're not talking about evil and bad people. We're talking about people that are just standing in the street holding a sign saying, we want democracy. That's it.
So that's it. We're gonna continue to follow the situation. This is Testigo, Venezuela. I'd like to give a message. I'm not gonna. I hope I don't mess it up like I did last time to any other people out there. Si usted quiere darme tu historia o su historia de la experiencia en Venezuela, pon en contacto conmigo en este canal de YouTube, Bold Like a Leopard. And if anybody wants to, obviously, if Juan Carlo wants to be contacted, I'll put his information below. We haven't talked about that yet, but we are going to continue to discuss this because this isn't a situation. This is not a series about, you know, screwing somebody or making fun of anybody. It's really talking about a situation that is unraveling with almost negligible attention from the world. You know, including the United States, including Europe. China doesn't really care anyway. And I find it fascinating for my own reasons, but obviously this person that you see before you or have been listening to, he has had direct effect on his life. He has people, you know, aunts and uncles, cousins back home that can't buy rice, can't buy basic foodstuffs, can't, you know, gasoline, I heard, is not even being sold in Venezuela now. They have to import it or something. It's like, you know,
gas shortage. I mean, talking about gas for cooking is an
right.
issue now.
And which in the oil capital of South America, you know, you would think that they could refine it and use it for their own people. So this is Testigo Venezuela, episode 5. We're going to try to get in the near future a panel discussion among people. People have different schedules, so we'll see how that works out. I want to thank you, Juan Carlo. We'll talk off camera. And everybody else out there, please share this series or share your news on Venezuela with your neighbors and friends. In the English-speaking world, we are watching a crisis that will eventually reach our shores. So, you know, just think a little. Good night, and have a great Wednesday. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey. No, I just wanted to.
I think there was a connection problem several times.
Yeah, there was.
I'm trying to see if it captured the whole thing.
Uh-oh.
Let me see.
What program are you using?
Well,
Entirely.
this is YouTube, so entirely
Oh, really?
Hold on.
Oh.
Here we go. I'm back on the live broadcast. So I had some connection problems. Let me see. It's supposed to give me a message. The Hangout ended successfully. So let me see if I can do it now.